it would stop the big quarry in Melancton, because they need to grab a pipeline to bring it right down from the lake in order to make it work. If you guys are looking for a way to stop that gravel pit, protect the water. Whenever it comes to the wetlands, there's a lot of wetlands that are on private property right now. What I'd like to see is a rebate on your property taxes, because we all know we pay too much here in Dufferin. If you have a percentage of your own property that is wetland. Keeping private owners responsible for the wetlands, which would not be the responsibility of the government. Again, it's all about personal responsibility. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. And I hope the video is in color because my face is bright red. Now we'll go on to question 3. Wilderness conservation. When asked about what they love most about our country, Canadians often point to natural beauty, wildlife, and spectacular wilderness areas. Yet we are falling below our international commitments to protect these spaces, and our parks and other protected areas are not funded at the level needed to conserve the diverse plants and animals that live here. A recent study shows that 50% of Canadian wildlife species are in decline. 87% of Canadians value the emotional and physical benefits of spending time in nature. However, 82% say that they're concerned that future generations won't have close or easy access to nature. What will you do to protect the quality and quantity of wilderness in Canada? And if I've got it right, we're starting with Kyle.
You got it.
Good.
I grew up enjoying time in the wild and in the wilderness. My family took lots of trips camping, enjoying our national parks. We have to absolutely find ways to conserve and preserve them. One of the first things that our government would do is lead a science-based terrestrial and marine conservation assessment. I know I mentioned this before, I'm going to say it again. We want to identify the best opportunities for expanding our protected areas, parks, marine protected areas, migratory bird sanctuaries, national wildlife areas. This is a critical project that we have to engage in to make sure we can do that. We also want to restore funding to the National Wetland Conservation Fund. These are fundings that have been removed. We want to protect migratory birds and increase resources for waterfowl conservation measures. We want to restore funding for the community-led National Wetland Conservation Fund, which was canceled recently. We want to restore funding for a community-led recreational fisheries conservation partnership program, which was also canceled. We want to create a new fund for community-based projects targeted to enhance wildlife. We anticipate this would cost $25 million over 5 years. We also want to maintain the community-led habitat stewardship program for species at risk, because communities are the people who are best able to help us preserve our wild environment. We want to maintain important conservation programs, including the North American Waterfowl Management Plan, the National Heritage Conservation Program. That's the steps we're going to take to protect and conserve our wilderness. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now continue with Stefan.
As much as I have pledged not to politicize the climate crisis, we are politicizing that issue as well. We have in Canada already, let me read it, all these are complicated names. We have already the Endangered Wildlife in Canada Scientists Association. These are the scientists who decide about what species is endangered, yes or no. But they cannot declare a species endangered. Only the federal cabinet can do that. Why not listen to the scientists? That makes no sense. Another failure. Certainly the Greens want to renew the Environmental Farm Protection Plan. I spoke a little bit about it before to enhance, especially farmers who want to go back to regenerative soil practices. That is also good for our wildlife. Use less fertilizers, less pesticides. We all know, for instance, with bees, the pollinators are in a crisis. So better farming practices will certainly help with our species not to become extinct. And what will be new with the Greens? We want to establish a biodiversity conservation plan for all of Canada. So take it a little bit out of provincial a jurisdiction and have a plan for a whole country to conserve the biodiversity we have.
Thank you very much, and we'll start again with Allison.
Thanks, Ray. The world's biodiversity, our plants and animals, is declining at alarming rates because of climate change and the destruction of our natural habitats. We need to act now to preserve and begin restoring our natural habitats and wildlife before it's too late. One of the most important things we can begin doing is protecting more of our land, waters, and oceans, so that our natural habitats and wildlife can begin to heal. This is why we're committed to protecting at least 30% of our land, fresh waters, and oceans by 2030, backed by funding and enforcement. Working with other levels of government to develop a system of urban national park support, conservation, and to preserve our natural heritage. Developing a national approach to tree planting using responsible reforestation to help lower our carbon footprint. Support the creation of Indigenous managed protected areas to make sure that species recovery efforts uphold Indigenous rights and embrace traditional knowledge to increase biodiversity. And we would expand marine protected areas to protect ocean biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll continue with Chen.
First off, we need to balance the budget so we have enough money to deal with all of this stuff. Whenever it comes to the environment, I was really disappointed in the Ministry of Environment. I called them in the summertime, telling them I had the biggest colony of brown bats, which was an endangered species living in my house. I was getting rid of them, and I wanted some help with some bat boxes. I was told, do not phone us until you find a dead one. I would like to see an initiative with the Ministry of Environment on concentrating on why we have healthy colonies of animals and what is being done to make sure that they do survive whenever they are endangered, instead of focusing on what's killing them. Now, one of these had the white noise, which is a fungal disease that kills most of the brown bats that are out there. With my party, we believe in you. We believe in personal responsibility. So again, I would like to see the tax credit for environmental property be lowered from the 10 acres that it's at right now to about 4 acres. If you have 4 acres of unused treed or wildflowered property, I would like to see you guys get a reduction in property taxes. Encouraging farmers, encouraging people who live on the land, not to be just cutting their grasses or using pesticides, but to let the wildflowers grow to help out our pollinators. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we will proceed with Michelle, please.
Okay. Quite often I hear from people, all you Liberals do is institute carbon pricing, and that is absolutely not true. So when the Liberals came to power, only 1% of our oceans in 2015 were protected, and today that's just over 14%. We invested $1.3 billion in protecting biodiversity, and this puts us on track to meet our international commitment to protect our wilderness spaces. For 2020, this target is 10% for marine and 17% for terrestrial. We have an even more ambitious plan, which is to protect and conserve 25% of Canada's land and 25% of our oceans by the year 2025. In addition, we have an abundance, we have a richness of wilderness space, or at least hiking space and beautiful forests and trails in this area. Not everybody has that. If we want to have our kids protect nature in the future, we need to make sure they're experiencing it. So the Liberals are expanding their Learn to Camp program, which will give 400,000 children every single year an opportunity to learn basic camping skills, and give 75,000 low-income families an opportunity to come to one of Canada's provincial or national parks so that they can experience that as well with their children. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And now we continue with question 4. This concerns pollution and toxic substances. Canada has made big strides to improve our health and environment by regulating toxic substances. Legal limits on lead in gasoline, restricting chemicals like DDT and ozone-depleting substances, the Canada-US Acid Rain Agreement, and the phase-out of coal-fired electricity have had an enormous impact on our well-being by saving lives, preventing illnesses, and saving billions of dollars in avoided healthcare costs. However, air pollution is still a leading cause of death and illness in Canada. In addition, our laws and regulations have not kept pace with emerging threats from newer toxic substances in our environment, including from pesticides in our food and other harmful chemicals in everyday consumer products. Many of these substances have demonstrated links to cancer, genetic damage, developmental problems, chronic illness, and many other health effects. These effects are often more severe for children and other vulnerable populations. Our overarching toxic law, the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, has not been significantly strengthened in 20 years. What will you do to ensure that Canadians are better protected from health and environmental impacts of toxic substances? And will you commit to strengthening the Canadian Environmental Protection Act and the Pest Control Products Act? And we'll start now with Stefan, Green Party.
Yes, I'm running the risk now of being the broken record. With the needle sticks on the turntable. Most of you are proper age, you know how vinyl works. Not being sarcastic, thanks God for pointing out of some regulations that were implemented under conservative governments, which the Liberals have dismantled. I did not know that, thanks for pointing this out. But at the same time, a conservative government in Ontario is dismantling environmental protection that the Liberals have implemented. And that's the thing. It is the token of inter-party bickering. The environment cannot be token of that. I do this, you do this, I don't do this. That is the root cause of the problem. Specifically on toxins, we want to reverse the burden of proof. Anybody who provides a chemical to agriculture, food, or personal care, the proof has to be reversed. Rather than our agencies proving that the substance is toxic and damaging people, the planet, plants, the company who releases a new product has to prove that this product is indeed healthy and not harmful. So that would be revolutionary, but that's the only solution we can have to this problem. And obviously my education is in business administration, economy and banking, so I love the Green Party being fiscally responsible. That gets me really excited because all these ideas eventually have to be financed. So if you look at these toxic issues, many people get sick. The savings in our healthcare systems will go to tens of billions of dollars if we did not have these toxic issues. So it's not only a health problem, an environmental problem, it's also a financial problem. Again, a holistic approach that the Green Party provides will tackle this issue radically.
Thank you very much. Democratic Party, Alison Brown.
The point of our environmental protection law is to prevent harm to the environment and to people. If it's not doing one of those things, we've got to strengthen it. It's true that our laws and regulations aren't keeping pace with changes in the industry. The law hasn't been significantly updated since 1999, despite being reviewed every 5 years. Canadians are still widely exposed to harmful substances like BPA in countless consumer products like water bottles and cans. We'll act to better protect Canadians from toxic substances in everyday products by strengthening the Canadian Environmental Protection Act and other legislation. We'll also reduce exposure to substances common in plastic products by banning single-use plastics. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. And Chad, we'd like to hear from you.
So with the People's Party of Canada, we want to lower the corporate tax rate to 10%. What are you guys are thinking right now is what does this have to do with the environment? It's going to mean that companies are going to be able to be more profitable in our area. One hand washes the other. This will allow us to strengthen the Environmental Act if they want to do business with us. One of the things that I do want to do is open Canada up for business, but it's going to be on our terms and nobody else's. Whenever it comes to air pollution, I would like to incentivize people to be clean as opposed to punishing them for driving fossil fuels. I'm not a big believer in the carbon tax. I would like to see an incentivization for the people that do drive hybrids, that do drive diesel cars, or anything that would lower their emissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. And Michelle, would you take the floor, please?
So the quick answer is that yes, we have committed to introducing a bill to reform the Environmental Protection Act, and to do that as soon as possible. We have also committed to eliminating coal by 2030. The provincial Liberals did this here, so we don't have coal now, we phased that out. But that's not true across the country. This is going to lead to a major reduction in mercury emissions, which is a toxic substance, obviously, in our air. Our plan to ban single-use plastic